Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perkenalkan, nama saya Piromat Suryanto. Saya dari jurusan Sistem Informasi NIM 23051020026. Untuk dosen pengamu Pak Andrea Eskom Mkom. Di sini saya mempresentasikan apa itu AI dalam keamanan cyber, ancaman dan peluang. Yang pertama, apa itu AI? Yang kedua, hubungan AI dengan keamanan. Yang ketiga, peluang AI dalam keamanan cyber. Yang keempat, ancaman AI dalam keamanan cyber. Yang kelima, risiko penggunaan AI. Yang keenam, etika dan tantangan AI. Untuk referensi jurnal yang pertama, Arthur Gregorius Pongo dan kawan-kawan. Dampak pemanfaatan artificial intelligence untuk meningkatkan cyber security. Yang kedua, Rasya Rafika, Widalala, dan kawan-kawan, dampak penggunaan artificial intelligence atau AI pada keamanan sistem, potensi, keuntungan, dan ancaman. Yang ketiga, Andi Purnomo dan kawan-kawan, peran artificial intelligence dalam deteksi dini, ancaman keamanan jaringan. Selanjutnya, apa itu AI? AI atau Artificial Intelligence atau kecerdasan buatan merupakan teknologi yang memungkinkan sistem komputer untuk melakukan tugas yang biasanya membutuhkan kecerdasan manusia. Tugas tersebut meliputi kemampuan belajar dari data, mengenali pola, memahami informasi, serta mengambil keputusan secara otomatis. Dalam beberapa tahun terakhir, AI berkembang sangat pesat dan digunakan di berbagai bidang, termasuk kesehatan, pendidikan, bisnis, dan keamanan cyber. Dalam konteks keamanan cyber, AI memiliki peran yang sangat penting karena ancaman digital semakin kompleks dan sulit dideteksi secara manual. Serangan cyber tidak hanya menargetkan individu, tetapi juga perusahaan besar, lembaga pemerintahan, hingga institusi pendidikan. Oleh karena itu, pengguna AI menjadi solusi yang efektif untuk membantu melindungi sistem informasi dan data dari berbagai ancaman digital. Selanjutnya, AI dan keamanan cyber. AI dan keamanan cyber memiliki hubungan yang erat karena AI mampu mengolah data dalam jumlah yang sangat besar dalam waktu singkat. Sistem keamanan tradisional biasanya bekerja berdasarkan aturan yang telah ditentukan sebelumnya. Namun, metode ini seringkali tidak efektif untuk menghadapi serangan baru yang terus berkembang. Dengan AI, sistem keamanan dapat mempelajari pola serangan yang pernah terjadi dan mengenali aktivitas yang tidak biasa dalam jaringan. AI juga dapat memantau sistem secara real-time sehingga ancaman dapat dideteksi lebih awal sebelum menimbulkan kerusakan yang lebih besar. Hal ini menjadikan AI sebagai komponen penting dalam sistem keamanan cyber modern. Itu yang selanjutnya, peluang AI dalam keamanan cyber. Pemanfaatan AI membuka banyak peluang dalam meningkatkan keamanan cyber. Salah satu peluang utama adalah pada sistem deteksi intrusi, di mana AI mampu membedakan antara intrusi, di mana AI membedakan aktivitas mencurigakan di dalam jaringan. Dengan demikian, serangan dapat diketahui lebih cepat dan ditangani dengan segera. Selain itu, AI juga berperan dalam deteksi malware. Berbeda dengan metode konvensional yang hanya mengandalkan daftar virus, AI dapat menganalisis perilaku sebuah program untuk menentukan apakah program tersebut berbahaya atau tidak. Dalam sektor perbank dan e-commerce, AI juga digunakan untuk mendeteksi transaksi penipuan dengan menganalisis pola transaksi yang tidak wajar. Untuk contoh penerapan AI dalam keamanan cyber dapat ditemukan pada antivirus generasi terbaru, sistem SIM berbasis AI, dan layanan keamanan cloud. Antivirus modern menggunakan AI untuk mengenali ancaman baru yang belum pernah terdaftar sebelumnya, sehingga perlindungan menjadi lebih efektif. Sistem SIM berbasis AI mampu mengumpulkan data keamanan dari berbagai sumber seperti server dan jaringan, lalu menganalisisnya untuk mendeteksi potensi ancaman. Sementara itu, keamanan cloud berbasis AI mampu melindungi data pengguna dari akses tidak sah dan serangan cyber yang semakin canggih. Ancaman AI dalam keamanan cyber. Di sisi lain, AI juga membawa ancaman baru dalam keamanan cyber. Pelaku kejahatan cyber dapat memanfaatkan AI untuk menciptakan serangan yang lebih canggih dan sulit dideteksi. Salah satu contohnya adalah phishing berbasis AI, di mana pesan penipuan dibuat sangat meyakinkan dan tampak profesional. Selain phishing, teknologi deepfake juga menjadi ancaman serius. Dengan deepfake, pelaku dapat memalsukan suara atau video seseorang untuk melakukan penipuan atau manipulasi informasi. AI juga memungkinkan otomatisasi serangan dalam skala besar, sehingga dampak yang ditimbulkan dapat lebih luas dan merugikan banyak pihak. Risiko penggunaan AI. Penggunaan AI dalam keamanan cyber tidak terlepas dari berbagai risiko. Salah satu risiko utama adalah kesalahan analisis akibat data yang digunakan tidak akurat atau tidak lengkap. Jika AI dilatih dengan data yang salah, maka deteksi yang dihasilkan juga keliru. Selain itu, ketergantungan terhadap AI dapat menjadi masalah apabila sistem AI mengalami gangguan atau kesalahan, maka sistem keamanan secara keseluruhan bisa terdampak. Oleh karena itu, peran manusia tetap diperlakukan sebagai pengawas dan pengambil keputusan akhir. Etika dan tantangan AI. Penggunaan AI dalam keamanan cyber harus memperhatikan aspek etika dan privasi data. AI seringkali membutuhkan data dalam jumlah besar untuk bekerja secara optimal. Jika data tersebut tidak dikelola dengan baik, maka dapat menimbulkan pelanggaran privasi pengguna. Selain itu, masih dibutuhkan regulasi yang jelas untuk mengatur penggunaan AI agar tidak disalahgunakan. Tantangan lainnya adalah memastikan bahwa AI digunakan secara bertanggung jawab dan transparan, sehingga manfaatnya dapat dirasakan tanpa menimbulkan dampak negatif. Untuk selanjutnya, mari kita menonton kasus nyata di YouTube.
Tax. Sounds like a bad sci-fi movie, right? Well, unfortunately, in this case, it's actually happening, and we can expect to see more of it going forward. Businesses are using AI to improve customer service. Customers are using AI to research products. Unsurprisingly, hackers are using AI to, well, hack. Agents powered by AI are equipped with the tools to write code, attempt logins, generate fake videos, and much more. While AI is doing amazing things to reshape our businesses and our lives in positive ways, it's also amping up the threat by putting more and more power in the hands of the bad guys. In this video, we're going to take a look at 6 different examples of attacks that are emerging using AI to power attacks so that you can prepare your defenses to withstand the onslaught. The first type of attack we're going to take a look at is an AI-powered login, where we're going to test the security of your system and your authentication capabilities to see if they'll withstand an attack. In this case, AI is being leveraged, and it's a pen testing or penetration testing framework that can be used, again, to test your security or by a bad guy to break into your system. And what it does, this particular one's called brute force AI. It leverages an agent, which is an AI system, which is able to operate autonomously, and it then uses an LLM to do some of its processing. So what is it looking for? Well, this agent is going to go out and start identifying login pages. So it's going to look for web pages that have login information. It takes the page, sends it off to the large language model that parses the page and figures out if there are any forms, login forms, areas where you can type in user IDs and passwords and things like that. LLMs are particularly good at doing that. In fact, this one was able to do it in roughly 95% of cases, correctly identify where the login area was on that page. Once we have that identified, then the agent is conducting an attack, and it directs the attack. What it does in this case is you have 2 different options. One type of attack is a brute force attack, where you basically try every combination of user IDs and passwords. This usually is not going to work all that well because you're going to run into a 3 strikes policy on a particular website that's going to lock you out after 3 bad attempts or something along those lines. So that's one possibility, is brute force, but a password spraying attempt might get away with, because in this case you're sending the user ID and password to a particular system or to a particular ID and then trying a different ID with that password. So you're trying in these cases to a number of different possibilities, but not all just barreling in on only one possibility. So this is, again, AI is running this attack. The user didn't have to figure out all of these capabilities. They use the pen testing framework and they launch it, and the AI takes care of the rest. By a similar theme, let's take a look at AI-based ransomware. In this case, we're going to talk about something called prompt lock. It was a research project that was designed as a way to see what's possible here. What is the art of the possible in this case? And it also uses an agent which then is leveraging a large language model. So you're probably seeing a theme here. And this whole thing then is designed where the agent is going to go off and really orchestrate and do all of the activities, direct all of the activities that are necessary here. So it's going to plan the particular attack. It's going to go off and analyze the information that it needs once it figures out. In other words, it will figure out what systems do I want to attack and then analyze sensitive data on those systems. So it will look for files and say, look, I think this stuff could be really sensitive. They're going to pay a lot for this. Or look over here and say, that's probably really not worth my time. And it can use that information then to figure out how much to charge, for instance. It's also going to generate the actual attack. So whatever code or whatever is necessary in order to encrypt the files and that sort of thing, and then execute the attack. So it's going to do all of that under the auspices of this agent. So the agent is really running the whole thing. The LLM is coming into play because it can help with the analysis of these files. You feed them in, and then we know what we're going to do. And the attack itself could result in an exfiltration of data, where I take your data and keep it for myself. It could amount to an encryption of your data, where I say, I've got your data, and I'm not going to give it back unless you pay me. Or it could just erase the data. So it depends on what type of attack you want to do, or threaten that you're going to erase the data after a certain period of time. And then some other things that the execution of the attack could do also is where this AI agent, leveraging the LLM, which is able to understand language, can actually write the ransom note for you. And it could be very personalized. It could, for instance, say, here are the files that I have leveraged, and here are the files. If you want them back, this is what it's going to cost you. And do all of that, all completely directed within the AI. And because it's all being done within an AI, we also have the ability to make every single one of these attacks different. It can be essentially a polymorphic attack where it changes. The first instance of this attack looks different than the next instance, which looks different than the next instance, which makes it really difficult to detect. We've seen polymorphic viruses and malware for decades, and they present a problem. Now we could see polymorphic generated ransomware attacks coming from AI. And by the way, this particular instance, this particular project, all of this capability runs in a cloud, which means you basically end up with ransomware as a service, all brought to you by AI. The next type of attack we're going to talk about is AI-powered phishing. Now, what have we been telling our users about phishing attacks? Remember, those are those emails that come in that say, I'm your bank or I'm some well-known entity, but it's a fake. And they're trying to usually get you, in most cases, to log in. Click on a link that takes you to a bogus site, then they harvest your credentials, and then they're off to the races. What do we normally tell people to look for that is a clue, that's the dead giveaway that this is not real? Well, oftentimes it's bad grammar, bad spelling. So we say if you see those kinds of things, then think it's a phishing attack. Well, the implication is if you don't see those things, then people are likely to believe that it's legitimate. And I'm telling you, we need to untrain all of our users from that, because now with AI, we're not going to see this kind of stuff much anymore. The smart phishers will in fact use an LLM, a large language model, which will generate their text in perfect English or Spanish or French or what have you, even though the attacker may not speak a word of that language. So these kinds of artifacts, these kinds of clues, if we're expecting to find them, we may not find them much anymore, and it could cause someone to have a false sense of security in this. And the way it would work is an attacker just basically puts prompts into a large language model. They're saying, okay, generate a phishing email that does this, that, or the following. And then what comes out is a phishing email that then they send out to others. So they could just copy and paste that. And you might say, well, but the LLMs that I work with, if I ask them to generate a phishing email, they'll refuse to do it, and they might. But there are other forms of those LLMs that sit out there that I'm not going to give the names of, but you can find them if you want to. Some are on the dark web that will generate all of this that don't have those kind of guardrails and don't have those kinds of restrictions. The bad guys will be using those. So, and you could also do a little bit of research to really personalize this, hyper-personalize this. With AI, it could go out maybe and scrape all of your social media posts and things like that, gather a lot of information about you to make this phishing email that's sent to you very specific to you, and therefore you're more likely to believe it. I did a video on this a while back where IBM did an experiment on this, where we basically took an AI and gave it 5 prompts and 5 minutes and compared the phishing email it had and how effective it was to what it took a human 16 hours to produce. Well-crafted phishing attack. And you know what? They were almost equal. This one was slightly more effective, the human generated one, but not by much. And when you consider 16 hours versus 5 minutes, you can see where the economics of this go. And here's the thing, the humans will not be getting vastly better at generating these, the AI will. So this is going to be another area that we're going to continue to see more and more influence from is AI generated phishing. Now, the next type of attack we're going to take a look at is AI powered fraud. And in this case, the fraud could take a lot of different forms, but I'm going to zero in on one particular type of fraud that we call a deep fake. And a deep fake is basically a case where we're using generative AI. So we've got a Gen AI model here. And I'm going to take, in this case, something that you say, either an audio recording of your voice or a video of you doing something. I'm going to feed that into my generative AI model, and then it is going to generate a model itself. And that model that it has is basically copying what you act like, sound like, look like, all of this sort of thing. Then the only thing I have to do is come up with a script, words that I want to put in your mouth, and I feed those into this, and then it generates out the result. So that's how a deepfake works. And they're not very hard to do. And in fact, we've already seen cases where these have been very effective. And by the way, if you want to know more about this, I've got a whole video on that, so take a look. I'm just going to say, if you think that by not leaving your voice on your voicemail is going to protect you from not getting deep faked.
Untuk videonya bisa ditonton sendiri. Untuk link sudah saya kasih di PPT. Selanjutnya, mari kita lanjutkan. Untuk kesimpulannya, sebagai artificial intelligence atau AI memiliki peran yang sangat penting dalam meningkatkan keamanan cyber. AI memberikan peluang besar dan mendeteksi, mencegah, dan menangani serangan cyber secara lebih cepat dan efektif. Namun, AI juga membawa ancaman baru apabila dimanfaatkan oleh pihak yang tidak bertanggung jawab. Oleh karena itu, pengguna AI harus diimbangi dengan pengawasan manusia, penerapan etika, serta regulasi yang jelas agar teknologi ini dapat digunakan secara aman dan bertanggung jawab. Demikian dari presentasi saya tentang AI dalam keamanan cyber, ancaman dan peluang. Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.